Hey folks, it's Emma. I've had this channel for a while, years actually, and I realized recently that I've never made a video about the basics of Tourette syndrome, like an introductory video to Tourette's. So here we are. If you don't know me or this channel or anything, the reason that I'm talking about this is because I have Tourette syndrome and have had it for 18 years. So I'm a bit of a professional in the way of the ticking world. First, let's talk about what tics are. Tics are uncontrollable repetitive movements or vocalizations, and I'll get more in depth about that in just a little bit. We should probably go into the definition of Tourette syndrome. Tourette syndrome is a neurodevelopmental disorder comprising of one or more vocal tics and two or more motor tics that have been displayed for a year or more. It is also in the diagnostic criteria that this should happen before the age of 18, but it is not unheard of for a Tourette onset to start after 18. A concern that people have brought up to me is tic frequencies. You don't need to be ticking every single second to be diagnosed. So like I said before, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into tics. The two types of tics I mentioned when talking about the definition of Tourette syndrome were motor tics and vocal tics. Motor tics are uncontrollable movements. Like that, for instance. Vocal tics are uncontrollable vocalizations. And we say vocalizations because if we just said uncontrollable sounds, that could also go into motor tics as well, because a lot of motor tics do make sounds, such as clapping, which now I need to do. And even more in-depth into tics than motor tics and vocal tics are simple and complex tics. And don't worry, it gets even more in-depth than all of that, but I have other videos about that I can link below. Trust me, there's a whole world of information. Simple tics are tics that involve one group of muscles. For example, shrugging and blinking, which I'm doing now because I was thinking about them and talking about them. Ugh. Complex tics involve multiple muscle groups, or more simply put, multiple simple tics. An example of a complex tic that I have is this. Another thing about tics that some people don't always know is that you don't always continue with just your starter tics through life. And by that I mean, you can always gain new tics. It's not like you get your diagnosis, you have a few tics from your diagnosis, and those are your only tics through life. You can gain new tics. I've had people ask me, is that normal? And yes, it totally is for someone with Tourette syndrome. It's normal to gain new tics throughout life. Heck, I gain new tics like every month or multiple times a month, and especially through what's been happening in the world recently, I've gained quite a few new tics. A big question that I get asked a lot is if tics are controllable. And to that I always say, no. If they were controllable, we simply would not do them. There is such a thing as tic suppression though. Tics can be suppressed, but will eventually come out. And usually if you suppress, they will come out a lot bigger and a lot more uncomfortably. Some people who tic can't even suppress at all, and I can only do it for a few seconds, but I know that other people can do it for minutes to even like an hour, which to me, I don't know how they do it because it's very, very uncomfortable. I don't advise suppressing. I only do it when I kind of need to, as in like if I don't want to drop something, so I suppress for a few seconds until I can put that thing down and then let the tics out. In the end of it all, tic suppression is really only the ticker's choice. If you're a parent or a friend or someone who is not the person ticking, you should not be enforcing suppression onto them. It is painful, it is uncomfortable, it leads to more ticking, more tic attacks, and it's just overall, it's not a good thing. I've also been asked, how do you treat a family member or friend who has Tourette syndrome? And to that I say, treat them like your family member or friend. But also there are some things that we should probably get into with how you should treat someone with Tourette syndrome. A big thing with that is mimicking people's tics can actually be pretty harmful. It can trigger that person to tic more and can cause a lot of discomfort. Laughing at tics. This really depends on the person ticking. You should consult that person and ask them whether they're okay with you laughing with them at their tics. I know I don't usually like it when people laugh at my tics, but I've talked to plenty of people through the internet that have Tourette syndrome and say, I like it when people laugh at my tics, you know, so it just goes by individual request. Overall, just be nice, you know? Also, I know that a lot of people have only heard about Tourette syndrome through media portrayals. Most media portrayals only show the Coprolalia aspect of Tourette syndrome, which not every person with Tourette syndrome experiences. And you might be thinking, what the heck is Coprolalia? What is she talking about? I'll also leave a link below to a video about Coprolalia, but basically, it's the part of Tourette syndrome where people utter obscenities and socially inappropriate things. Only 10 to 15% of people who have Tourette syndrome experience this. So it is in the minority. Sometimes I'll have recently met someone and I'll get to the point where I tell them, hey, I have Tourette syndrome. And then they'll ask, so you cuss? And I'll say, well, have you heard me cuss this entire time that we've been talking? So yeah. Tourette syndrome is not a swearing disorder, it's not a lying disorder, it is simply a tic disorder. People have weird misconceptions through the internet of what kind of things Tourette syndrome is, and a lot of times they're just very wrong. Anyway, again, I will link a bunch of videos below that go more in depth about different aspects of Tourette syndrome so that you can get a more in-depth view of what it is and all of the little parts of it, and all the big parts of it. But I hope this video helped you understand Tourette syndrome a little bit more than you already did. Or if you knew nothing about it before, I hope you learned something out of this. So yeah, you've completed Tourette Syndrome 101. You got an A+. Thanks for watching. Check out the links below. Like, comment, subscribe. Do what you want. Have a great time. Have a wonderful life. Thanks, Twitches. Bye!